Hey everybody, it's Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, where I go on a weekend cruise just about every weekend. And as you all know or have seen in the news, there are a few hurricanes out there, from Fiona, Gaston, Ian. We've got a couple of them out there right now. And it's one of those things that everybody always talks in the cruise industry about, going on a cruise ship in hurricane season. So now we're starting to see some of what that is like. And this is the first time really since post-COVID that these situations have started coming up. And so I wanted to refresh with everybody of what I've seen Royal Caribbean do in the past. So if you have one of these cruises and you think it may be impacted by a hurricane or some kind of a weather system, you'll have a little bit more insight and knowledge onto what may happen. Now, most cruise lines are going to try to steer the ships away from going through a storm or even getting close to that storm. That is not a fun experience for anyone. It is not a fun experience for the crew, and it's certainly not a fun experience for us as the passenger, and it's a horrible publicity stunt. The cruise lines love publicity, but not their ships being impacted by huge waves and storms. That is something they want to stay away from. The good news is that a cruise ship is probably not going to sink because of a storm. It may be extremely uncomfortable, it may rock a lot, but it's designed to weather very, very strong storms. May damage a lot, water may get in, but it's not going to go under. It should not go under, I should say. Very similar to, as I think of an aircraft or a plane, it may go through a lot of turbulence, very severe turbulence, but it is built to withstand that. And so it's going to come out on the other side most of the time unscathed and without an issue. Now, to keep the cruise ships out of the storm's way, the most common thing that you're going to see is they're just simply going to change your itinerary. So we've seen that happen recently with the NCO ship going over to Bermuda. It decided not to go to Bermuda because Hurricane Fiona was going up and hitting or impacting Bermuda. And so you don't want to be on a cruise ship going anywhere close to there, or even going there a few days after a storm may have hit. And so they took the ship in an opposite direction. You'll see this also if there's a storm in the Gulf. So we've got Ian coming up into the Gulf now. If you're on a cruise that leaves from Miami, maybe Port Canaveral, Port Everglades, and it's going to cut over to Mexico, your ship is going to do everything it can to not cut through the path of this storm. That means they may give you an extra sea day, or maybe they'll add a Coco Cay day that you didn't have before, or another port. They will try to find somewhere else to go if possible. But oftentimes, I've seen the cruise lines just add another sea day, and you're going to hang out in a safe location out in the middle of the ocean, and once the storm passes, then your ship will go through and cross. It gets interesting when a hurricane or a weather system is impacting the home port of where this cruise ship is based out of. Meaning, if that is the location you're going to, such as Port Miami, Port Everglades, Port Canaveral, if a storm is coming there, or Port Tampa, I should say in this case, because that looks like it'll have more impact of Hurricane Ian right now, that's where things get a little bit more interesting. And so when we look at the ports, that's going to be, the port authority and port agents have complete control over decisions as to what to do at that port. So they're going to keep the port open as long as they can, but at some point they then have to keep their workers safe, and they're going to close the port. So that means no ships can come in, no ships can leave. And in a hurricane situation, the absolute worst case scenario for one of these ships is to be tied up in a port when a hurricane or a weather system is coming through, especially if it has guests on it. So what you're going to find that the cruise lines will often do is they will shorten a cruise or extend a cruise based on when it's going to come through that home port. So if it is the port of Tampa and it's a Saturday or Sunday, and you've got a storm that's coming in, going to be impacting from Friday to Saturday, they could cut that sailing short and say, okay, we're going to get everybody in and out on Thursday. We're going to cut your sailing short by 2 days. Or what they've done on one of my sailings, or that I've seen happen in the past, is they extended that sailing to say, okay, instead of coming in on Saturday like we're supposed to, we're going to come in on Monday or Tuesday and then safely disembark everybody. So if you get kicked off early, you're getting kicked off in the middle of a hurricane the next day. So you're going to need to make sure that you're finding a hotel, or you're getting on a plane, renting a car, and you're getting out of Dodge because that hurricane is coming. So my personal opinion, I'd rather them extend my cruise and bring me back after the danger has already escaped. It may take a little bit longer to come back, especially if it is a significant storm. The port may be without power. They may not have employees able to get there. So there's a lot of things that go into effect. Worst case scenario, they will find a new home port for that ship to drop you off at. So if Port Tampa is highly impacted, maybe the Port of Miami is spared and doesn't have that much damage, and they'll bring you over to the Port of Miami to drop you off so that you can start acclimating back on land. You may have to go get a car, you still have to change airports and all that good stuff, but at least you are staying safe throughout the duration. Now, if you are on one of these impacted sailings, what I've seen done in the past is Royal Caribbean has always compensated when something outside of the guest control, including weather events, unlike the airlines who normally don't care about weather events, they always have compensated because they want us on their ship spending money. So if they extend your ship or extend your cruise, they're probably going to compensate you for the days that it's extended, knowing that you're going to have to change your airfare, you're going to have to find a hotel room. There's all sorts of downstream implications. So I was on one of the shortened sailings. So my 7-night cruise got turned into a 3-night weekend cruise, which is perfect for me, honestly. But they still wanted those people that signed up for that cruise to go on that cruise. And so they actually incentivized us to still keep that cruise. So they gave me 100% FCC credit because it was such a short cruise, not what I signed up for. And they gave me 50% of what I paid as onboard credit if I actually made that sailing. And interestingly, that one, they actually moved people from another ship that was supposed to be sailing out the same week and said, we're not going to send 2 ships. We're just going to migrate everybody to the bigger ship, and we're going to send 1 ship out versus sending 2 different ships. But Royal Caribbean did make it in my best interest, especially being in South Florida already, to easily make that ship. Now, this presents a few items for guests who are especially coming in from out of state. So if you are coming into, let's say, one of the shortened cruises, you're on the backside, so the hurricane's already hit, you're looking at coming for the next one, the airports may still be closed, the workers might not be able to get there, the hotels may not be open or they may not have power yet, but that cruise ship might still actually wind up sailing because it was able to come into the port, and so the cruise might not actually be canceled. So, but with this, you got to kind of check what is your comfort level with coming down to Florida or wherever that cruise ship may be that's being impacted by a weather system or hurricane. Are you comfortable coming down at that point? Especially if you're coming down beforehand, you got to think about it. But even if you're coming afterwards, you got to make sure that it's going to be a safe experience for you and your family. Luckily, the cruise lines are pretty flexible in, giving you FCC, so future cruise credit, if you do wind up canceling because of a weather event. So you'll see this advertised at the top of the Royal Caribbean webpage, very similar to the location of where all the COVID safe to sail information was stored, but they're going to give you some options, but chances of them actually giving you your money back, probably not going to happen. The other thing that you want to make sure that you're thinking through is if your ship is extended, that you have enough medication on board that will get you through an extra long period of time. We saw this in pre-COVID when there was a storm that came up into Galveston and the ship could not make it back for over a week, and people didn't have some life-saving medicine because they didn't pack enough. So if you have medicine, always make sure you're packing some just in case something goes bump in the night and you have some extras. All of these thoughts are really pre-COVID. That's all that I've ever seen. And the cruise lines back then had a lot more money than they have today. So it'll be really interesting to see with hurricanes and weather systems coming through, how flexible they're going to be with allowing passengers to cancel, rebook, and not make those cruises. Are they going to give us the same incentives that they have in the past with onboard credit and FCC? I don't really know. Or are they going to hold our feet to the fire and say, hey, you booked it, you got to show up and make it? I hope that they still give us some flexibility, but they are in a much different financial situation. Now, another thing a lot of you all are thinking, well, just go through your travel insurance. So I am not going to go into travel insurance because I recognize that that is a can of worms. If you do have travel insurance or you did buy travel insurance, make sure that you're calling the insurance provider, you're reaching out in advance of making a decision on what you want to do to see if, the reasons that, you don't want to go are part of a covered reason so that you can file a claim, you can file a policy or whatever and get your money back. All right, everyone, this is Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, hoping you all stay safe, pay attention to the weather, and cruise on.